That's great. Thank you, Maria. Can everybody see that? Is that pinged up? Excellent.
Good.
Okay. Hello. Thank you everyone for coming today. This is an area that myself and Jonathan are really passionate about, because it's, I suppose, our working world. And the plan for today is that we'll give you a bit of introduction to ourselves and the team, the work that we do, how we sort of support and help young people. And as Maria said, there'll be kind of questions and answers, put them in the chat and we can answer them at the end. The one thing that we just like to kind of point out is that because there's a range of people here sort of listening and watching today, and also the slides will be available to watch kind of at a later date, please don't ask specific questions about your sort of child or a young person you might be related to or working with. We're kind of keeping this quite general, but if there is something specific that relates to yourself and your family, then there are contact details for ourselves and the team at the end. So please feel free to make inquiries then. So we are the Preparation for Adulthood, part of adult social care. And so Jonathan and myself manage half of the team each, and we have 15 workers across us. We're one sort of bigger team. There's no differentiation between my half of the team or Jonathan's half of the team. The staff are doing the same work and kind of the same sort of qualifications and experience. We sit within adult social care, but we work closely alongside kind of our colleagues in children's social care, education, special schools, children's health services, and other sort of agencies that we might be regularly liaising with. Part of the ethos, I suppose, of the team and the workers is that we're aiming to support people to live the life that they want, and we have a strong kind of focus on independence, but with the caveat that that's independence for whatever they're suitable for that young person. So there's be some people that we work with where independence might be living on their own in the future with very little support. For other people, independence might be being able to press a button to make a kettle boil while still living in 24-hour care. So when we talk about independence, it's very much relative to what a young person is in a position to kind of do and achieve. A lot of our work is sort of focused on enabling people. We look at kind of how we can be least restrictive. So we don't want to just kind of fly in and jump in and take over. We're looking at what the young person and their family can do already, what a young person might need a bit of support with to kind of boost their independence and just make sure they're as independent as they can be.
We work with lots of young people. There's normally a sort of commonality there. The remit for our team is to work with young people who are moving from childhood to adulthood and who have a disability. So lots of young people that we work with will have been attending one of our specialist schools in the city and or open to our children with disability social care team in children's services. And that's where a lot of our referrals come from. There's a caveat in that if someone's diagnosed with a mental health disorder, there is a separate team and a separate way of working for those young people. And that's not covered by us or our team. But any other disability, so brain injury, learning disability, physical disability, neurodiversity, we're well catered to meet that need. We do take some referrals as well from what you might know as SNPs, so Special Needs Inclusion Play Schemes, which is a service within Children's Service providing clubs and activities and PAs to young people or children with a disability. We also support some people who have been in mainstream education, so that's a mainstream school, but it's only those people who have a significant level of disability, just that they may have been supported there rather than moving to a specialist school. Some of the young people that we work with will have had support from children's social care before because of their disability. So maybe attending a club, maybe receiving some help in the home, maybe receiving some respite or some short breaks for their parents. Other young people who have a disability may not have needed that and won't have had any support from children's social care and may just have been having their needs met by their family and their school. Both of those things are okay for us. So it doesn't matter if someone has had children's social care before or not. We're used to accepting people who haven't and who haven't. I've already mentioned that our team doesn't support those with a diagnosed mental health disorder, and we'll give you the contact details later for the team that does.
So we generally hear quite a lot of rumours of things that people hear about adult social care. We know that a lot of people are very kind of worried about their child, young person turning 18 and reaching adulthood. So part of the reason why we're doing these talks, and we've got the information here today, is I suppose to try and clarify some of the facts and the fiction. And we hear all sorts of interesting things like support will just automatically stop at 25. It doesn't. And that if you don't do something now, then you're never going to get something else. And it's quite interesting to us to hear some of the rumours that kind of people tell us. We haven't yet kind of managed to find out where they're coming from, but please ask us if there's any kind of questions. So some of the things that our workers do is that we look at what a young person might need some support with as a result of their disability. And part of the assessment looks at if a person is eligible for adult social care support. And this is the same, when we talk about eligibility, it's the same for all adults. That there must be sort of 2 or more areas of someone's life where they're not fully independent and they need a bit of help. So that could be travelling around their community. It could be needing some support with personal care. It might be needing some support to get dressed. It might be needing some support to cook a meal, amongst a huge range of other things as well. And part of the work of our team is to look at how we can promote someone's independence. So if there's anything that we could put in place to support someone to be more independent, for example, some technology, some travel training, some enablement support. And once kind of the assessment is done and we determine that someone's eligible for adult social care, then we look at how we support somebody to meet those eligible needs. Part of the work that we also do links in with other services. So that might be attending an EHCP review at a school or college. We get invited to child in need meetings from the children's social care team, or maybe looked after reviews if a child's in the care of the local authority. Or sort of if someone's got a lot of health and medical needs, the transitions team up at the hospital are good at kind of inviting us to come and gather information about a young person in that way. And then we also then equally refer on to other providers and other agencies that we might be working with. So the Adult Specialist Community Learning Disability Service and the Sheffield Adult Autism Neurodevelopmental Service, who use their acronym SANS because it's much easier than saying the full name, support adults that have either a learning disability or autism, as the name suggests. And we can refer on to those as well if a child or young person who we're working with has a need for their sort of support and intervention. There are some people as well that the team will be working with who might have needs that have a more medical basis, a more health basis. And then we sort of link in with our colleagues in the NHS in a team called the Continuing Healthcare. And that's to look at whether a young person would be eligible for some funding from the NHS for health. That doesn't impact on somebody's support. You don't automatically get more or less or different support. It's about the, I suppose, entitlement and eligibility for funding somebody's support. Another big part of our role is, as with any other social care team as well, we work to address any safeguarding concerns, looking at how best we can support young people with disabilities to be safe and to manage any risks as well.
Great. So I'm gonna just whiz you through what happens when a young person's referred to us. So the sort of steps that we take and how things normally work. So we receive a referral, and that could come from anybody. So sometimes we get them from young people themselves, more often from a parent, from a teacher, or from a children's social worker. We check through the referral, and we make sure we apply our eligibility criteria to make sure that the person is right for our team. And if it's not the right fit for our team, we'll redirect it to the correct adult social care team. We then we triage that person and their situation. So by that I mean, if a young person's referred to us and they're still 16 and there's not much going on, we might feel that we don't need to get too involved straight away. Whereas if a young person's referred to us and they've already turned 18 and they're really struggling, for example, we might feel that we need to get involved sooner. So we have a look at each situation and we establish and prioritise the referrals that we receive. And that means that we're not seeing people in the order that they referred to us, but we are seeing people in the priority that an order that they need to be seen in. So if they're eligible for our team and once we've triaged them, we'll add them to our wait list. And that person will remain on our wait list until we allocate a social care worker. And so for some young people, because of what I've just discussed, that might be a few months. For other people, that might be a bit quicker. And it just depends on each situation. Once we've got an allocated social worker, that worker will then take responsibility for assessing the young person, and they'll visit and they'll meet the young person and anybody else that they want to be involved. So often a parent, sometimes a friend or a teacher, and we'll do that anywhere that's suitable for that young person. That could be at home, it could be in school, it could be out and about somewhere else, but somewhere that it's going to be comfortable for the young person to speak in. We may want to see a young person in more than, or we highly likely want to see that person more than once. So we might come and see them at home and in school, for example, and there we can gain the views not just of their parents, but also their school teacher. Our focus, we're assessing young people and what help they need because of their disability. So our focus will always be on that young person and what they need. But the Care Act, which is the law that we work under, is really clear that we can still and should consult with anybody else that's relevant. And we will always consult, unless there's very good reason not to, with close family members. So if you are the mum or a dad of a young person and you're referring them or your child's been referred to us, normal practice is for us to be speaking to you as well. And we do that so that we get a good view and a good rounded view of a young person, but also because we know that some young people very occasionally might not tell us the full extent of what they need help with. So don't worry, we're wise to it, and we'll be speaking with you and with their teachers to understand in the round what they need help with and what they can do and what they can't do. There are some real crucial differences. If your child has been supported by children's social care, there are some important differences between how children's social care and adult social care works. In children's social care, they have a very set way of visiting families, visiting young people and checking that they're well and cared for and getting the best support. And that's set down in their guidance. In adult social care, that's not there, and we visit and we see people as much as we feel we need to in order to do our job. So if you've had children's social care services before, you can expect a slight difference in how we and the number of times that we might visit. There's also often in children's social care, there are allocated social workers all of the time, whereas in adult social care, we only allocate a social worker when somebody needs one. So that might be for a period of some months while we assess a young person and set up a package of care. And when things are working well and we're satisfied and their parents are satisfied that it's going well, we might then take a back step and remove that allocation. But the crucial important point is that even though there might not be an allocated worker, the person remains open to adult social care and open to our team. So if something crops up and you need our help, you can still come directly to us. You're not engaged in a new referral into adult social care.
Oh, hang on, I've got click happy. There we go. There we are. Technology is not our strong point. So if you've come to any of our talks before, you'll know that something on the PowerPoint is a step up from post-it and handout notes. So the handover period sort of between ourselves and wherever I suppose we're receiving a young person from, usually school or children's social care, is I suppose we know a time when a lot of people can kind of worry about the future and experience some anxiety. Part of the role of our team, although we sort of sit within adult social care and we're part of an adult world, is that we have the ability to assess people under the age of 18 or at the point of their leaving school, wherever it suits somebody most. And generally, our general main involvements were at two kind of key points in someone's life, usually as they're turning 18, because we know that something from a children's world might be ending, and then again at the point of leaving school. And for some people that might be all in together, so you might have input from us kind of at one big time. For other people, they might be leaving school and then it might be another couple of years before they're leaving education. And whilst we kind of have the ability, I suppose, to allocate to people at sort of 16 and 17 and start some of our assessment work, the important bit to note is that we cannot provide any support, any funded support to anybody under 18. So we do have sort of situations where young people might have a worker from our team involved because they're assessing what they need when they reach 18, but the support that they need at this present time at 17 is then provided by children's social care, SNPs, education, or other sort of periods of time on that. That then creates, I suppose, a time when for some people there might be sort of two different agencies involved, like the children's and adult services. And that time gives us, I suppose, a nice window of opportunity to assess someone's needs, gather information, learn about that young person, learn what they want for the future and how we can kind of plan for either children's social care ending or education ending. Some people may have sort of health inputs as well, and they have a different, I suppose, handover process. But it is a sort of similar moving from children's services to adult services. And the role of a sort of a paediatrician does end because that's the children's services, and often then your local GP will then take over kind of managing medication. And for some people that need more specialist services like the community learning disability service, for example, they work in a similar manner and that they will be involved whilst there is a need. So if somebody needed, for example, say a hospital passport or some psychology input or an OT assessment, they would be involved for that piece of work. And then as we've said, same for social care, you would remain open to the team, but not a specific worker. So it's slightly different from the ways of children's services do work. One of the things that we quite often get asked is about timescales, when things happen, how long they will take, should they happen at this age, should they happen already, should they happen next week, next month, next year. And the law that kind of, I suppose, dictates how we work is very clear about saying it's at the right time for that young person. So there'll be some young people that might have very complex needs where we need to be involved. We know about them at sort of 16. We're very involved at 17. We're assessing needs. We're planning for their future, and that's right that we're working with them under 18. There'll be other people that are happy in education. Their needs being met through school, through college, through family, and they're going on to college, and that's a natural progression for them. And we might not get involved until they're, say, 22, 23, something like that. And there's no, I suppose, tick box or right or wrong answer. Depending on each individual and their situation, either of the timescales could be right for them. We are in Sheffield working towards ensuring that we're aware of young people prior to 18 and that their assessments are done. But we are also conscious we have a bit of a wait list. So that's something that we're aiming for, but we know that we're not fully achieving it yet. And that, as Jonathan said earlier, takes into account some level of risk and urgency, an individual situation. The other question that we quite often get asked is, how long will this take? And again, it depends, and we can't really give an answer for that. For some young people, you might already know of the service that they like doing. They might have a PA in place, for example, and they're meeting that young person's needs really well. And it's right that we've assessed that should then continue. So some of that is quite quick because you've got the services identified and they're up and running. There'll be other young people, however, that need very bespoke services set up. They might need a supported living home commissioned or something like this, and that will take a lot longer. And again, it depends on a young person's needs, what they're wanting from support. If someone sort of says to us, I only want support on a Saturday afternoon to go to the football, that's what we would call quite a low level support. It might be quite quick to set up. If someone is wanting 24/7 support. They might need 2-to-1. They might need some specialist training from staff. Lots of other kind of complicating factors. Like we say, that does then take a bit longer to plan and arrange. And as we've said before, the support that we, I suppose, implement then starts at 18. So even if we're assessing at 16, 17, 17 and a half, whenever it might be, this is about planning for when the person turns 18.
I'm just going to talk about some of the types of services that we can plan for or arrange. Not all of these will be suitable for everybody, so it's not exhaustive, and our social workers will form a view about what might be best and most suited to a young person. But the types of things the social workers might consider are using the Sheffield Council's enablement service, which is a free service, time limited, but aimed at helping particularly young people, but also other people with a learning disability, learn how to do specific daily tasks and things that they might need to do. So, for example, getting a bus somewhere on a planned route, or preparing something for their tea. So it's very task orientated, but it helps people move forward. Social workers might also consider what we call urban volunteering, and that is supported activities that are happening out and about around the city, where there are groups of young people who may have a support need, but not an overly high need, and can be supported as a group to do something that can be often quite fun, but also with some meaning behind it. So particularly in allotment growing, for example. We may also feel that a young person could have an opportunity to explore employment, whether that's paid or unpaid, whether that's an internship or a full job, and we would link into the appropriate agency, which in a lot of cases is Opportunities Sheffield, to get them on that right pathway. We can also look at what we call day opportunities or day activities, and what you might know as clubs or day centres, which is where a group of people are supported in a particular building with some staff to help make sure things are okay, that they're safe, to take part in group activities. We also look at providing individual support workers, and they're sometimes called personal assistants, and they can provide help to people around the home to do normal sort of daily tasks, or to get out and about either around town or going out to do things that a young person wants to do and can't do by themselves. Lastly, we also look at short breaks for a young person or respite. Those terms are used interchangeably, they mean the same thing, and it's something where that young person receives support from somebody other than their carer, normally in another building, so that the carer or the parent has some time to themselves and to be doing other bits and pieces. And we can arrange that sometimes on an emergency basis, but most often it works best in a planned way, so the parents know that they've got a break coming up and can plan to enjoy it. Aside from short breaks and respite, we will also offer a carer assessment to anybody who appears to be a carer. And if you're a parent of a young person with a disability, you're a carer. So we'll offer that to you, but it isn't something that you have to take up if there's a reason why you're not up for that at the moment. And it's provided by colleagues in the Sheffield Carers Centre. So that's an independent organisation that we in the council have a contract with to provide that work. And out of that, they might be able to make advice and guidance on some welfare benefit matters, because those matters change as your child turns 18 and leaves school. They might be able to provide some direct support to you, some more general advice and guidance, or most often, and what's really effective, is actually connecting carers to other carers or parents to other parents, and being able to develop that sort of peer support network around. If your child has been in education, they may well have had transport provided, not always, but often, and that may have been free at one point, and then you may have been asked to make a contribution as they get older. In adult social care, transport is an option and is available, but only if there are no alternative means of that young person getting about safely. And we have a procedure that we follow to check whether there are other things that might be available to people to help them move around without us needing to provide transport to them. And that's both because we can increase their independence. I would much rather be able to move about by myself when I want and how I want, rather than reliant on other people. But also because young people often will have other means to help pay for transport. So, for example, we will look at whether people can use the bus or the tram independently, and if not, whether they have the potential to if we gave them some education. We'll look to see whether any family or friends can help them move around the city. We will look to see whether they are in receipt of the mobility component of personal independence payment, which is designed and paid to pay for transport. And only then, if we've exhausted all those other alternatives and none of those are suitable, will we look at providing paid for transport. You? Oh, you mean? Yes. Final type of service that we might provide, which I almost forgot, is around accommodation. So adult social care don't have an accommodation duty. We don't have a responsibility placed on us by the government to provide accommodation to young people or anybody with a disability. That duty rests with colleagues in housing services. However, it often is the case that somebody needs accommodation, so needs somewhere to live, as well as needing support. And sometimes we can provide that together. And I'll explain a bit more about that in just a moment. There are lots of available options around where young people live. Lots of people will be living with their family, so with their parents or siblings, and that will be an arrangement that will carry on for a number of years, and that is absolutely fine. There are some young people who can't remain living with their family or haven't been living with their family for some time, or want to move on. And I'm thinking back to when I was 18, I can remember thinking that I very clearly was looking forward to moving out from my parents' house and finding my own way. And some young people with a disability will be thinking the same way. So there are other than options. They may want to look for their own general tenancy, and that could be a private tenancy or via council housing and housing services. And important to say that if that's the case, we can provide support that goes into somebody's flat or house. Another option is to look at shared lives. And shared lives is a service that matches young people with people who want to look after somebody and have enough space in their home to do so. So young people might be supported well to live in quite a homely and family setting with responsible adults who can look after their care needs, but in a way that is less restrictive and more homely, say, than a residential care centre. We might also look at helping young people move into shared supported living. And that's the bit that I just talked about a minute ago in terms of providing accommodation and support. So shared supported living is where a young person has their own tenancy, but it's within a building that's shared by other people. You could think of it like a house share. The crucial difference is that comes with support on site, and that support provided by one or more support workers is then split across and shared by the people who live in that house. Another option is to look at supported accommodation. Slightly different from shared supported living. Supported accommodation is provided by housing services, and it's for people who have got quite a lot of ability, but maybe not quite enough to be living by themselves just yet. And so supported accommodation comes with a range of tenancy support and support workers to help people stay on track and get done what they need to do, that maybe isn't quite as high as the amount of support that we in adult social care might provide. And lastly, and we explore this in very few circumstances these days, but we also would consider, if necessary, residential care centre. So that's a much larger building often where several people live. They don't have a tenancy, so they don't have any rights there, but the care and support is provided by a care provider that's looking after the whole scheme. And that's often with more people than you'd find in shared supported living.
One of the things that quite often parents are worried about, I think, is that when they're looking at the future, there's a lot of anxiety about if their son or daughter moves into supported living or residential care, then that's it. They'll never see them again. But that very much isn't the ethos of how things work. So the way that I might, for example, go and visit my mum after work or at the weekends, that we would still be encouraging that kind of relationship. And the same way that any young people, young adults, at some point might return to live with their parents, that would also be the same for someone with a disability if that's what's best for the young person and their family. It isn't a kind of, once we've done this, this is forever, or things might work well now, they might change in 5 years' time. In 5 years' time, something different might be happening. So please sort of don't become anxious about the idea of living elsewhere, because it's whilst ever it works for the young person and their family. It doesn't have to be this is it now, forever, evermore. And equally, we would still be wanting, I suppose, and hoping that families can kind of continue with their familial relationship of, going back home for Sunday dinner, going out to the cinema, going out for someone's birthday, whatever it might be that any young person without a disability would still be typically doing with their family. So the next thing I suppose to discuss is about some financial money matters. One of the changes or the differences in an adult social care world is that for any individual who has support from social care, and that's any type of support, whether it's a PA, a day service, some support to volunteer, living in residential care, anything that involves funded services from adult social care, it is we look at whether the young person can afford to contribute. So the young person themselves, the person who's in receipt of the support, will have a financial assessment. So this just looks at the income that the young person has. It doesn't take into account any parents' income, any parent savings or anything like that, just the young person that's in receipt of support. And if a young person has over £23,000 in savings, which I have to caveat that it very rarely happens. I think we've only had 1 or 2 people in about 10 years that have that level of savings at 18, then they are classed as a full fee payer, and that means that they need to pay the entire sum of their social care support. If people have some income, not sort of above the £23,000 in savings stage, then we look at, it's done on a bit of a sliding scale. So usually if a young person is in receipt of both universal credit and PIP, that then means that the young person reaches a threshold where they then have to make a contribution. And that can be done as part of our assessment process, so that you as family are aware from quite early on what that contribution might be. Whilst ever we're working with young people who might still be in education and who are only in receipt of PIP, so they haven't claimed universal credit because they're in education still, then they wouldn't be having a contribution to pay. But that is something to bear in mind in the future. Well, I suppose one of the expectations as well that we have in adult social care is that we want people to look at their own resources first. And so that's, as we said previously, with transport, looking at whether someone's PIP or PIP mobility payment can fund their own transport, whether they can fund some of their own activities, whether they can invest in some technology that might help or anything like that. We also work with, so we know that a lot of young people who we work with aren't able to manage their money, and we know that a lot of parents are registered with the DWP as somebody's appointee. and generally are more than happy for that to continue. We do work with a small handful of people where they don't have that family support or don't have anybody available that can help manage their money. And if that's the case, or for young people where parents just feel that it's not an appropriate role for them to take anymore, then we can also look at having a third-party appointeeship to manage a young person's money. And that's sort of a similar role to what a parent might be doing. The government and the benefits agency would pay the appointee someone's benefits, and the appointee would then have the responsibility of making sure that sort of essential bills are paid, that the young person's got money for shopping, paying contributions, whatever else they might be doing. And the level of involvement, I suppose, varies. We work with some young people who might be able to, say, have £50 or £100 a week for, you know, sundries, lunch, shopping, takeaways, whatever. And an appointee would manage the more serious side of things, so the bills and things. Or we have other young people who really have no financial understanding at all. So actually, even the idea of £10 for a takeaway or something wouldn't be something that would be appropriate. So we work with kind of a range of people with money skills or not, as the case may be.
Okay, and we also just wanted to mention about decision making. PR, or parental responsibility, comes to an end when someone ceases to be a child and when they turn 18. And in UK law, there's no one else has immediate decision-making authority over that person. And that's often quite scary and quite a daunting prospect, particularly for parents of a young person with a disability, where they have quite rightly made decisions about them and about their health and their education for some time, and may need to do so for some time more. But the law in this country sort of says that everybody is assumed in the first stages to be able to make their own decisions, but that's caveated by unless we can evidence and show that they can't. And we have a process that we call mental capacity assessments to determine whether somebody can make a particular decision or not. So, for example, about how they manage their money, about where they live, about what type of care and support to receive. And we are well used to assessing people and understanding and establishing whether that young person knows enough and can understand the information to make that decision, or whether they can't. We also, our social workers, do a lot to help young people make decisions. So we may use alternative methods of communication. We may use pictures and diagrams to help them understand things. We may be able to take them to certain places and show them what something looks like to help them understand. So it's not just about people making abstract decisions in a meeting. We can do a lot to help people make decisions for themselves. If a young person can't make a decision for themselves, and we've assessed that, then we need to make what we call a best interest decision. And that means that it's a decision about somebody else, or about that young person, and it's made in their best interest. So as far as we can determine, the best thing that would be for them. But it's important for you to know that the law also provides a duty on us to consult everybody else who is relevant, and a parent of somebody would be a very relevant person. So the way that we work is to try and make sure that if there are any significant decisions that need making, that we are doing that in consultation with them, if they're able to talk to us about that, or if not, their parents, and so that we can find some consensus and agreement on what the best course of action is. And I should caveat that by saying that this is all about significant decisions, big decisions, where to live, whether to have care or not. There are 100 decisions that are much smaller that will happen every day in your household that are completely outside of this sort of scope. So decisions about what to have for tea, or where you're going for a walk after tea, has very little to do with us, and it's absolutely a case of you and your household and family making those decisions as you have been before.
I mean, as well, I think that in terms of decision making, it's we don't make assumptions that just because someone can't, say, manage their money, they then also can't understand other things. It's very specific to the decision that's being discussed. And it's also about having the relevant people involved. So if, for example, a young person needed some brain surgery, we would be expecting the surgeon and the medical team to lead on that. We're not medical and quite frankly quite squeamish. And so medical things are not really our bag. We may well be involved in that decision. We may well support the process, but we wouldn't be the decision makers because we wouldn't have the medical knowledge. Equally, we wouldn't be expecting a doctor to say make a decision about whether someone has an appointee, because the GP might not be involved in that area of somebody's life. So it is about kind of which of the agencies involved in someone's life are key to the subject that's being discussed, I suppose.
Thank you. And that's bringing us towards the end of what we wanted to, or what we prepared to talk to you about. This will be available afterwards, as Maria's already mentioned, but so you don't need to scribble anything down, but we've just included some contact details. We do have an online referral form that parents or teachers can use. There's a direct email address to contact our team, and that's staffed by a duty social worker during office hours each workday. And there's a generic phone number. Sorry, our team doesn't have its own phone number. That will go to our general adult social care business support who pick up the phone, so they'll take any messages and get in touch with us. Just to reiterate, we receive referrals from anywhere that has involvement with that young person. That could be social workers, parents, schools, health professionals, and as I said earlier, occasionally young people themselves. What's really one of the sort of key important point to take away from today is that there's nothing that automatically refers young people to us. So even though we are part of the system, even though we sit within the council, we don't automatically know which children are on roll in our specialist schools. We don't know necessarily which children are open to our children's social work colleagues, and it relies on those agencies who know that young person to refer the person to us. So if you're the parent of a child and you're in a annual education review, and you think our team could help your child, it's absolutely worth checking whether a teacher or social worker has made that referral or not, and if not, making sure it happens. And right at the bottom, we've included just the details or the contact number for our children's social care team. Even though it's called Children's Safeguarding Hub, it's the main access point for children's social care. So if your child is under 18 and you need support now before they turn 18, I'm really sorry, but we can't help you. That's the team that can help and you should make contact with. That's more or less the end of what we prepared to talk to you about. But we're very happy to take questions that you might have now.
Great. Oh, thank you guys so much. I don't know if you want, you stopped sharing. That was so informative. And I know that you do have an aversion to technology, as you shared with me before, but you've done a fab job and it was great. And
Maria, we had aspirations of things like online post-it notes and everything else, and then we thought, no, let's start low and we'll go from there.
Definitely. But no, it was so useful, and yeah, just thank you so much for all of the time that you spent bringing all of that together. There's been loads of questions, so I'm gonna work through those now. Rachel's asked about sensory needs and deaf and vision needs, and I think there was another question from Rachel that said, should all deaf students with significant communication needs be referred through at 18?
I suppose it's about what the individual would need some support with. So there is a hearing impaired service within the council, and they run some drop-in sessions during the week up at the Howden House. If someone who is deaf needs support, say with a utility bill or to ring a bank, and they can help facilitate that contact. Again, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it depends on the young people. So we work with young people who are deaf and sensory impaired, who might be significantly impaired in other areas as well and not independent at all. Equally, there are young people that we have assessed in the past whose only sort of disability is around their hearing impairment, but otherwise are quite happy to say, no, I know I sign, but I'm independent otherwise. I can happily get the bus on my own. I can travel to this place and that place. So in those situations, we wouldn't then work with somebody.
It's much more about the impact of that disability on the person than what the disability is. The disability is useful. It helps us understand what somebody might be experiencing, but you know, we may have mentioned it earlier, but a young person may have autism, and one young person might be able to manage that quite happily themselves, whereas another young person might really struggle because of that and because of the symptoms of it. So it depends is the answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just sorry, Maria, just adding in terms of there is sort of entitlement for young people that are deaf, blind around a specific assessment relating to their kind of the entirety of their sensory impairments. And that's something that we kind of commission and work with, but we're not experts in that area ourselves, but we commission agencies who are much more experienced in working with young people who are deaf and blind.
Yeah.
So that then runs alongside the work that we do and helps us inform which services to commission.
Yeah, fab. Thank you very much. So the next question from Kathy, is there some cases when the referral is automatic? And when should we be looking to make referrals or suggest they are made? And she's put in brackets, I work in a school.
Yeah, so no, nothing is automatic.
Mm.
We would much rather contact, if you're not sure whether a referral has already been made about a young person, please contact us first and we can say yes or no, we know them or we don't. But no, nothing is automatic. Absolutely nothing, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
fine.
But
we're used to lots of schools will contact us, normally post-16 leads or deputy heads, to check in whether we know about young people. So absolutely fine to check, and please use the PfA at Sheffield email address that's on the slides.
Brill. And then the second part about when should we be looking to make referrals?
Jim, we have a slight preference for sort of from 16 onwards. That helps, I suppose, us and the team to know whether we've got a bit of an influx of young people of a certain age, whether we might have to commission new services. As we've said, it might not mean that we are actively involved at 16, but that helps us sort of thinking ahead for us as a service and knowing, you know, if we have, I've used the example already, a cohort of people where there's lots of young adults who are deaf and blind, then we need to commission something specialist. Or if we know the sort of type of referrals that we're coming through, whether we know that there's, say, Talbot School, for example, have loads of leavers in 2 years' time, that might help us then plan for the future.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Helen. So what is the expectation on parents to be involved in the care of the child post 18? The child may want to stay with parents, but that might not be their choice or what they feel to be feasible. What happens then?
Yeah, is that, just to check, is that the parent may not feel it's feasible for the young person to stay? Thank you.
I feel like that's what it is. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely fine. So, I mean, yeah, really technically speaking, there's nothing that I'm aware of that compels a parent to need to do anything to an 18-year-old or above. So if you're a parent and your child then turns 18, there's no requirement on you to do anything. The duty shifts to the state to be assessing and providing to meet that person's care needs. However, in reality, lots of families want to carry on providing parenting the way that they've been doing, carry on providing the support, and that's normally 9 times out of 10 that's normally brilliant and excellent. In those cases where a young person turns 18 and might think, oh, I want to stay with my parents, but actually their parents feel that that's not possible for whatever reason, then we can start to explore what a good alternative might look like. We talked earlier in the presentation about shared supported living or other types of accommodation, and that might be really appropriate. So looking for service that would include some element of accommodation so that people have support and a roof over their head as well. And both, if a young person is living with their parents or away from their parents, there's an element of choice for that parent to decide how much involvement they want to continue to have. We meet such a wide variety of people and families that, you know, we have people at all parts of the spectrum, from parents who want to very much maintain a real sense of oversight and supporting, you know, in a lot of depth, to some parents who just want to be able to see their child on a Sunday for a tea out somewhere,
including young people that don't have any parental involvement.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
the law sort of say, as we've said, parental responsibility ends. In the eyes of the law, any informal support, so that's parents, siblings, grandparents, whoever it might be, is caveated whilst that carer, the person providing support, is willing and able. And that's sort of where we stand in the law, and that, you know, depending on the needs of your person, that changes. Jonathan and I have both worked over the years in wider adult social care services, not just preparation for adulthood, and we work with families where the young person's 70 and their parents are in their 90s, and that works for that family, and that's great. And we've got other people who are 17 at the moment, and we're planning that as soon as they're 18 they're moving out. So there isn't a right or wrong answer. It just works for each individual and their family. We also have people who move out and then at a later point move back home. It's very personalised to what individuals need.
Yeah.
Our social workers who come and provide assessments, they will have a conversation with a parent or carer about what they can or want to continue to do. So as part of our assessment of that young person and that situation, that will include what parents can and can't do.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So Emma's asked, what type of difficulty would prompt a referral, and should all students with a significant disability such as blindness be referred? I feel like you've probably kind of already answered this in your previous questions about it being based on need and the impact of the disability, but I'll not try and pretend like I know the full story.
That's right, Maria. I think there is also an element of consent, and we do occasionally have young people who, for whatever reasons, you know, whether they've had a bad experience with social care previously or just don't want support for whatever reason, absolutely do not consent for us to assess them. And if they can make that decision themselves, then we respect that. Yeah, it just depends on the situation, really, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a really vague and unhelpful answer, sorry.
No, but I think it's just it is really important though. Like, you know, the thing I'll be taking away from this is just about how bespoke what you offer is, and there just is no one way, you know, and it's just really dependent on the individual. There's lots of questions, so I'm going to keep going.
Keep going.
So if the young person is receiving respite, PA support, etc. through SNP service or children's social care, this stops at 18. How does this support continue after they turn 18 and are now part of adult services? Is there a delay, or does it continue without a break?
There won't be it probably won't. It may not continue exactly as it is, because if children are accessing children's respite and short breaks, that would be in a children's service, and an adult would not normally be supported in that environment. So we may need to change the service that going in. You're right that the support would generally end when someone turns 18, and that's why we are here as preparation for adulthood rather than an adulthood team. Our job is to try and assess and understand what someone's level of need is and what service they may need when they turn 18, and get that in place for when they turn 18. In some cases that isn't possible. Sometimes people aren't referred to us early enough. Sometimes we have priorities, which mean that we can't see absolutely everybody. But if we know what the risks and the urgency are for a particular family or situation, that really helps us prioritize our work and make sure we get to the people who need to be seen most urgently. So no, nothing would continue. But if we assess somebody and if they're eligible, and if what they've had before has been meeting their needs, we may support continuing very similar services. So maybe respite but a different centre, maybe continuing PA support if that's going well.
I think as well, just for everyone to note that any services that are in place through children's doesn't automatically continue in terms of quantity. So if someone, say, is assessed as having 5 hours PA support a week as a child, you don't automatically get 5 hours a week as an adult. It might be right that you do get 5 hours. It might be that you need more. It might be that less is needed because there are other things happening. It's not just an automatic, well, we had 5 before, so now we're going to get 5 again. Like I say, it's based on what the team would assess as needing as an adult. And for some people that's more, for some people it's the same, for some people it's less.
Super. Thank you. Okay, so Emma's asked, is it possible to get support for someone before and after college so the parent can work full time and the young person can continue to live at home? Can this care be out of the house if the parent cannot be home until 5:30 p.m.?
Yes.
Yeah.
The answer? Yep.
Short answer, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Although the caveat is, if that if that's the young person's home, you know, we may look to see whether they can go home with support rather than have to stay outside, or in a club or cafe or whatever.
Perfect. So Kathy's asked, do you apply for shared supported living through housing services?
No, we manage the shared supported living within adult social care, so housing services don't get involved. And then there is, as well as the support that's provided to somebody, that person is also required to hold a tenancy, and that tenancy will often be with a registered social landlord.
So we have at the moment, our kind of brokerage and commissioning service have a list of all the vacancies. So there might be, we know we've got a supported living option near Ecclesfield, and there's 2 vacant flats there within a block of 8. We know that this one in Bigness has got this, in Crystal Piece has this and this, and that's to try and enable, I suppose, us to look at the compatibility of the resident. So if we had a referral for someone that's 18, 19, a young person that likes going to the pub and doing karaoke, we wouldn't be putting them in a vacancy where there's people in their 80s or 90s that want to stay at home and play bingo. So it's about looking at the right services across the city. We have also had a couple of on occasions where there's been a group of young people who might know each other either through education, through family connections, however it might be, that want to move together into a supported living. So we've set up a scheme, I suppose, with, say, a group of 3 or 4 young people that we know already are getting on, are friends, and would be quite a good match to share with. So we can help kind of facilitate some of that as well.
Yeah, fab. Thank you. So, if someone wants to move to shared supported living when they reach 18, does that mean parents need to be speaking to adult services now, or does the PfA team support parents through this?
Yes.
Yeah. I think if you mean if the questioner means should they be referring sort of early before someone turns 18, then yes, absolutely, because we can start to get the ball rolling before that person turns 18. But we would support the young person and their parents throughout that process until someone has moved into and settled in their new accommodation.
Super. Thank you.
I suppose it would be impacted by when you're looking at moving. If this is sort of, your son or daughter's sort of 18ish and you're thinking maybe when they're 30 we'll be looking at this, then that would be outside of our remit because it's sort of so far in advance. But if it's something that's happening in the next few months or the next year, then that's very much where we'd support.
Thank you. Helen, Jonathan, I'm just now, it's 1:30 now. Are you able to stay for a little bit longer to answer some additional questions, or should I be inviting you back to do a follow-up session? Do you have a few more minutes, or do you need to go?
No, we can stay.
Yeah, we can stay.
Okay, great. So Kirsten's asked, if the social workers step back because things are going well, how does the family get back in touch to make changes, and how often is the situation reviewed?
Yeah, so we have you can contact us at any time, or whichever team, and this is the same for all of adult social care, through sort of the duty service where there's workers available every day if there's been a change in situation or a change in need. We otherwise aim to review people's support on an annual basis, but again we do appreciate that isn't always a timescale that we can meet in terms of having to prioritise other work. We tend to have a bit of I suppose an understanding of the schools and colleges are quite good at letting us know who's leaving each year, and that helps us prioritise and I suppose make contact with people prior to when the end of the academic year happens. So whilst we're not in an academic year world, we do get busier in the sort of spring because we know that people are leaving school, and then we quieten down in the autumn and things sort of ebb and flow a bit that way.
Yeah. Great. So Kathy's asked, what is the best way to find out how mental capacity is assessed so we know how to prepare young people for it as far as possible?
Good question.
Question.
Yeah, best question so far. I suppose you need to understand about what mental capacity is and how it works. In adult social care, we have some training that we provide to our social workers and social care workers. I don't know whether other agencies provide that or not. I think MenCap used to run some support sessions on a variety of topics, and I think capacity was one of them as well.
And there's some quite good resources online on the Mind website and on the, not the Sheffield MenCap, but the national MenCap webpage about capacity. Again, I suppose it is decision specific. So if for example the query, the decision was around money, we would be expecting a young person to know what money they've got coming in, where their money's held, i.e. in a bank or a bank account, how much things cost. So could you get shopping for £2, or would a weekly shop be near 100 quid to the value of money? How you save money, how you budget for your bills, what would happen if you gave your money to a stranger. So things related to that decision. There isn't, I suppose, a set list of facts or information of you need to know these 10 things about money to be able to manage it or not manage it. It links in, I suppose, to the decision and the risk. So for some people, if we were looking at, say, which support worker do they want, is it person A or person B, the young person might be able to say, well, this is why I like person A better than person B, and that would be enough evidence and information for us to think they've thought about this and they've liked person A over person B. If it was a more complex decision, for example, say, surgery or something like that, what we would expect someone to understand would be different. So again, another slightly vague and inconclusive answer, I'm afraid, but it's very difficult.
But one of the things our workers would, unless it's like an urgent decision that needs to be made today, our social workers should be planning their capacity assessments in such a way that uses maybe people who know that young person. So if the questionnaire is from a school, we may well look to the school to support us in completing that capacity assessment by allowing us to visit, allowing us to use a room, letting the TA maybe who knows that young person well sort of sit in, and we might give the TA maybe in advance some of our resources, some of the information, so that they can have a think about, okay, how can we say these things in a way that the young person is most likely to understand and get that meaning across. So I think it might be on a more bespoke level. When those situations arise, we may be giving other professionals that we're looking to for support information and requests about how we can best get that across to a young person.
Great. And then related to this, actually, Hans has asked, can previous reports or assessments be used in mental capacity assessments?
If it's mental capacity decisions or assessments are on a specific decision. So as Helen said earlier in the presentation, if we've made a determination on capacity in relation to where someone lives, that doesn't automatically mean that they can't manage their money, say. So no, we would carry out new capacity assessments for new decisions. If we're carrying out a capacity assessment on a decision that has been made previously, so it's been previous mental capacity assessment, we would probably look back and be interested in what the last assessment showed us. But if the decision has arisen again now, we'd still be carrying out a new capacity assessment.
And part of the work does look at what is the evidence telling us, because we're, I suppose, very experienced in having young people who sit there go, oh no, I can do all that myself. I can manage all my money myself. And we see sort of parents and carers look absolutely horrified at this. So the workers are quite experienced at understanding what is someone telling us and what is the evidence also showing, because we know that there are some young people who will learn parrot fashion. For example, you cross the road, you look left and right, and off you go. Whereas we know that they would then dart across the road, and that's the same with saving money. If we have a young person, young lad who we saw last week, who sat there and said, "Oh no, I can manage all my money. I'm saving up for a laptop and but we know full well that actually he hasn't saved any money in the last year because he got fleeced doing something else and he spent his money here and there. So we don't just go on we've gone to visit you and we've been told this. It's what is the evidence showing that then backs up what we're assessing. And that's the same whether it's a capacity assessment or whether we're looking at someone's needs and what they can do for themselves. You know, if a young person sat there saying, oh yeah, I can cook and I can do X, Y, and Z, and the family going, well actually, but we do all the cooking, we make dinner, we do this and this, and we make sure there's food in the fridge that's in date and everything else, then we obviously don't ignore what a young person's saying, but we just add a bit more context around it.
Yeah. Great. Okay. And I apologize to anyone whose questions I'm skipping over, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm asking questions from different people, because some people have submitted multiple, and we will need to finish this up, unfortunately, in a few minutes. But Sarah has asked, if a person is receiving both PIP and universal credit, then they need, or do they need or not need to do a financial contribution towards care costs?
Yeah, so everybody has a financial assessment regardless of what they're in receipt of. The rough threshold is if someone has income of, it's about £230 a week, I think. Anything above that will be a funded contribution. And the way that contributions work is an assessed amount. So if a person's contribution is say £50 a week and their support comes to a total of £51 a week, the young person pays 50 and we pay 1. If their support costs £1 million a week, they still pay 50, we pay 900,000. And if someone's support comes to less than that, so if their support came to £40 a week, they would just pay the 40 because that's the maximum their support costs. But it's generally a weekly income of it's not exactly 230, but it's around about the £230 mark, and is disregarded. Anything above the 230-ish is, you know, so if an income is £235, your contribution would be £5.
Great, thank you. So Gary's asked, does every young person with an EHCP get a Care Act assessment, or does a referral need to be made to the PfA team?
No, so we don't support every young person with an EHC plan, because we are part of a disability service. Our remit is specifically around how someone's disability impacts a young person. So there are people across the city who have an EHC plan. I know, for example, if they're a care leaver, or if they've had some care experience, or if they've had something else going on in their life that's not a disability. So we wouldn't assess that cohort of young people. There are occasionally young people as well that have disabilities that for whatever reason haven't had an EHC plan, and we would still be assessing that. So it's about someone's level of need as an adult, and that any needs are as a result of a disability.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Helen, Jonathan, thank you so much, and for staying on for an extra 10 minutes to answer these questions. You are definitely going to have to come back though, because there are still more that we've not got to, unfortunately. But yeah, and to everyone who's attended, thank you so much. I'm just going to post the feedback form in the chat, and I'd be really grateful if you could take some time to fill that out and share as well who else you would like to be invited to join us for these sessions. You will also receive an email with a link with all of the resources from today. And yeah, thank you very much.
Maria, would it help? See the kind of questions that weren't answered, if we wrote a little paragraph answering them and sent them.
If you've got the time to do that, that would be great. They're in the meeting chat, but I'll send them to you as well. But yeah, that would be really, really good if you could do that. If you've got time. Yeah, brilliant. Right, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your time. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.